My mother stared straight into my eyes over the speakerphone and declared, "Your children are simply far too noisy, Emma. Julian's latest partner comes from refined circles, and your household's disorder will spoil her holiday." My own parents canceled our invitation to the family celebration just to make a good impression on a woman they had met only 3 weeks earlier. I did not raise my voice. I did not plead. I simply answered, "That is fine, Mom." Then I ended the call. Everyone expected me to remain at home weeping into a lukewarm mug of cocoa. Yet 24 hours later, the whole family appeared unannounced on my doorstep, certain I would beg to be forgiven. Julian's supposedly elegant girlfriend took one glance at me in my stained apron, turned pale as paper and whispered in shock, "Wait, is she your sister?" What my parents never realized was that Julian's polished, high society companion carried an enormous secret, and I possessed every single piece of evidence. My name is Emma. I am 36 years old, a working mother of 2 wonderful children. For as long as I can recall, I had been certain that family meant everything. But 2 weeks before Christmas, my mother destroyed that conviction with one telephone conversation. I stood in the kitchen mixing hot cocoa when her name appeared on my screen. When I picked up, there was no greeting, no question about the children, only a chilly practice pause before she cleared her throat. "Emma," she said, placing me on speaker. "We must discuss Christmas dinner. Your brother Julian is bringing his new girlfriend, Victoria. She comes from old money, extremely high society. And well, she is simply too refined for your disorder." I stood motionless, the spoon slipping into the mug. "My disorder." "Your children are simply far too noisy," my mother answered without the slightest hesitation. "They will destroy the mood. We want a polished, elegant evening to impress Victoria. Therefore, it is better if you and your family simply remain at home this year." Julian was 30, the favored son who could do nothing wrong in my parents' eyes. He had been seeing Victoria for barely 3 weeks, yet here were my own parents discarding 2 decades of family customs just to bow before a stranger. I glanced across at my 8-year-old boy and 6-year-old girl coloring quietly at the table. A sharp, searing pain struck my chest, but I refused to let my mother hear me break down. My mother stayed on the line, clearly waiting for me to plead, shout, or dissolve into tears. That had always been the pattern. She would press, and I would twist myself trying to repair everything. But this time something inside me broke. "That is fine, Mom," I said, my tone strangely steady. "Enjoy a wonderful Christmas." Before she could grasp what I had spoken, I hung up. I drew a deep breath and surveyed my kitchen. For years, I had exhausted myself attempting to host, bake, and satisfy my family's constant requests, only to be treated as second-rate beside Julian. If they did not want us present, fine, we would create our own joy. My husband David was enraged when I explained, yet I smiled and kissed his cheek. We decided at that moment to arrange the warmest, most happy Christmas morning for our children. No forced grins, no careful tiptoeing, only genuine family affection. Then 3 days before Christmas, chance intervened. I was having coffee with a former coworker when she mentioned noticing my brother's online posts with his wealthy heiress girlfriend. She opened a photograph of Victoria on her phone to show me. The instant I recognized Victoria's face, my blood turned to ice. The designer, clothing, and posture were recent, yet I knew those eyes at once. Victoria did not come from old money. In truth, 4 years earlier we had worked side by side, and her actual name was not even Victoria. Her real name was Vanessa, and 4 years ago we had shared a cramped break room at a failing marketing agency. In those days, she was no heiress. She was a junior assistant who departed the company under a shadow of missing money and unpaid bills. I kept the discovery to myself, deciding it was not my problem to solve. But on Christmas Eve, the universe handed me the tools. At 6 in the evening, my doorbell sounded. Opening it, I discovered my parents, Julian and Victoria, standing on my porch carrying plastic food containers. "We brought you some leftovers," my mother announced loudly, walking straight past me into the entry without waiting to be asked. "We thought we would perform a kind act and deliver the meal you missed." It was pure passive hostility wrapped in false generosity. My father trailed after, examining my simple living room with a pitying smile while Julian stood upright, gripping Victoria's arm as if she were a prized possession. "Emma, this is Victoria," Julian said, his tone thick with superiority. "Her family owns properties across Europe, so try not to soil her coat with unclean hands." Victoria smirked, adjusting her fur wrap as she stepped into the hallway light. "It is so charming how ordinary people live," she murmured, her voice thick with scorn. Then she raised her eyes and locked them directly on mine. The color vanished from her face at once. Her smirk dissolved into pure terror. The handbag in her grip slipped slightly, her knuckles turning bone-white as she struggled for breath. Wait, Victoria stammered, her voice trembling so badly it scarcely sounded human. Is she your sister? The room fell completely quiet. My parents appeared puzzled, yet I simply smiled, resting against the doorframe. My mother frowned, glancing between Victoria and me with a mixture of irritation and confusion. Yes, Victoria, this is Emma. I informed you she is Julian's older sister. Emma, accept the food so we can go. Victoria is unaccustomed to places like this. Victoria did not shift. She remained frozen on my doormat, her eyes wide with total dread. She knew precisely who I was. 4 years earlier, when she still used the name Vanessa, she had not merely left that marketing firm. She had left after attempting to blame a $3,000 expense account error on me. I had preserved every email, every document trail, and every scrap of proof that cleared my name and compelled her quiet departure. I folded my arms and gave her a sweet, razor-edged smile. It is so delightful to meet you at last, Victoria. Or should I address you as Vanessa? Victoria swallowed hard, her hand shaking as she tightened her hold on her designer bag. I have no idea what you're talking about. My name is Victoria. Oh, my error, I said innocently, moving aside to allow them deeper into the living room. You simply resemble a woman I once worked with in 2022 remarkably closely. She was a junior assistant called Vanessa Miller. Oddly enough, she also enjoyed claiming her father owned vineyards in France, right up until her bank accounts were locked for bounced rent payments. My father released a sharp scoff. Emma, stop acting so resentful merely because you were not invited to dinner. Apologize to Victoria this instant. Yes, Emma, what is the matter with you? Julian snapped, placing a protective arm around Victoria, whose face had gone entirely ghost white. Victoria's family possesses generational wealth. She attended Oxford. I laughed softly, tilting my head. That is amusing, because the Vanessa I knew spent 2022 residing in a studio flat in South Philly, avoiding calls from debt collectors. My mother glared at me, her cheeks flushing crimson with humiliation. She is clearly inventing this to spoil our evening, Victoria. Pay no attention to her ordinary class envy. They were digging their own holes, completely unaware that Victoria was perspiring through her costly silk blouse. Envy? I asked, keeping my tone perfectly level. Mom, I have nothing to envy. But if you believe I am inventing this, let us settle the matter right now. I walked to my desk in the corner of the living room, opened the lowest drawer, and drew out a black leather binder. It was the complete file of my former work records, the precise folder I had kept to protect myself when the firm audited our department 4 years earlier. Julian stepped forward, his eyes flashing. What is that meant to be? Some forged evidence you created? Why do we not ask Victoria? I said, turning the binder around and opening it straight to a clear plastic sleeve. Inside lay a printed company identification badge, a signed tax document, and an official termination letter. Here is the identification photograph of Vanessa Miller, junior administrative assistant. I said, indicating the sharp picture of the woman standing directly before us. And immediately beneath it is the legal notice concerning the $3,000 in unauthorized company card charges she attempted to blame on me before she disappeared. My father gasped, stepping nearer to examine the paper. The name Vanessa Miller appeared in bold black letters right beside her unmistakable face. My mother's jaw fell open. She stared at the document, then at Victoria, whose hands shook so violently she dropped her designer handbag onto the carpet. Victoria. Julian whispered, his voice breaking as the color left his face. What is she saying? Who is Vanessa? Victoria tried to reply, yet only a squeak emerged. Her true name is Vanessa, I continued evenly. Her father does not own European properties. He operates a tire shop 2 towns away. And the reason she considers my family too disordered is because she knows if she remained in the same room with me longer than 5 minutes, her entire high society deception would collapse. The silence in my living room was total. My parents stood completely humiliated, finally recognizing the truth.